The California sun poured down over the Beverly Hills Auto Expo, glinting off polished metal like diamonds. Wealthy collectors gathered around their latest trophies, sleek machines that purred with money and ego. But at the center of the crowd stood a different kind of beast, a cherry-red Ferrari 250 GTO, silent for years, its engine cold, its glory forgotten. Standing beside it was Richard Hale, a silver-haired millionaire with a champagne glass in one hand and arrogance in the other. His tailored suit gleamed as bright as his smirk. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out, raising his voice above the hum of chatter, "this masterpiece hasn't run in a decade. The last mechanic who tried to start it failed miserably." He paused for effect. "So, I'll make this interesting. I'll give anyone here this Ferrari if they can make it run in 1 hour." The crowd laughed. It wasn't a challenge. It was a joke. Richard's tone made it clear. He didn't believe anyone could do it, especially not anyone outside his wealthy circle. That's when a quiet voice spoke from the edge of the crowd. "I'll take that bet." Heads turned. The voice belonged to Marcus Reed, a tall black man in grease-stained overalls, his hands rough and scarred from years of honest work. He looked out of place among the silk ties and designer watches. Richard turned, brows arched. "You?" His laughter drew a few snickers. "You look more like a valet than a mechanic." Marcus didn't flinch. "I'm an engineer, and I can make her run," the crowd murmured. Richard grinned like a cat spotting a mouse. "Well, why not? This should be entertaining. The Ferrari is yours, if you can bring her to life before the clock runs out." "Deal," Marcus said, wiping his hands with a rag. "Perfect," Richard said, motioning to his assistant. "Start the timer." The digital clock began to tick. Marcus walked around the car, eyes sharp and calculating. He didn't touch it right away. He listened to the silence, to the possibilities beneath the hood. Richard leaned on the fender, smirking. "What's the matter, afraid to get your hands dirty?" Marcus finally lifted the hood. Gasps spread through the crowd. The engine bay was a maze of corroded wires and dust. He grabbed his small, worn toolbox and got to work. His movements were steady, precise, tightening here, loosening there, tracing lines like a surgeon. Minutes passed. The crowd whispered, half amused, half curious. "What's he even doing?" one man muttered. "Trying to impress us," another sneered. Richard chuckled loudly. "Maybe you should pray instead of tinker. Miracles are faster." Marcus ignored him. He pulled out a spark plug, cleaned it against his sleeve, reconnected a loose ground wire, adjusted the fuel mixture. His hands moved like memory. At 30 minutes, sweat glistened on his forehead. He muttered softly, "You've still got some fire left, don't you, girl?" The crowd mocked him again. Talking to the car now? How cute. But Marcus wasn't talking to them. He was talking to the machine, a connection born of respect, not ownership. When the timer hit 40 minutes, he twisted a final bolt, then climbed into the driver's seat. The silence grew thick. Even Richard stopped smirking. Marcus turned the key. The Ferrari coughed. Once, twice, then roared to life, loud, raw, and magnificent. The engine's growl filled the air like thunder rolling through glass towers. The crowd gasped, stepping back. People clapped instinctively. A few even cheered. Richard stood frozen, the color draining from his face. His champagne glass slipped, shattering at his feet. Marcus stepped out, calm and composed, wiping his hands again. "Guess she just needed someone to listen." Richard blinked, forcing a laugh. You must have done something before. There's no way you fixed it that fast." "Everything I did," Marcus replied, "you could have done too, if you understood her." The murmurs grew louder. Phones were out now, recording everything. The once arrogant crowd now stared at Marcus with something between awe and disbelief. Richard swallowed hard. His pride battled his embarrassment. "Fine, a deal's a deal. But tell me," he said coldly, "what's a man like you going to do with a car like that? You can't even afford its insurance." Marcus smiled faintly. "Don't worry about me. I build engines, some of the ones your company uses, actually." Richard frowned. "What did you just say?" Before Marcus could respond, a sleek black car pulled up beside the crowd. The door opened, and Victoria Hale, Richard's daughter, stepped out in a tailored suit. She froze when her eyes met Marcus's. "Marcus?" she whispered. Richard's head snapped toward her. "You know this man?" Victoria's expression softened. "Dad, he's the engineer who designed your prototype hybrid engine last year, the one you took credit for in the press." The crowd gasped again. Richard's smirk fell apart completely. Marcus's gaze was calm but heavy with meaning. "You wanted a car that runs, Mr. Hale. Maybe now you'll understand what makes it move." It's not the money, it's the man who believes in it. The Ferrari's engine purred behind him like a lion satisfied after a hunt. Richard couldn't speak. For once, the man who always had the last word was silent. And as Marcus turned to walk away, the reflection of the red Ferrari gleamed on his back, proof that dignity, skill, and quiet strength were worth more than all the wealth in Beverly Hills. The crowd around the Ferrari was still buzzing, their laughter replaced by awe and confusion. Reporters from the Auto Expo had begun crowding in, snapping pictures of the black mechanic who had just humiliated one of Beverly Hills' richest men. For Marcus Reed, it wasn't about fame. He was used to fixing what others had broken, engines, reputations, sometimes even his own pride. But today, something was different. Richard Hale stood stiffly beside the car, face pale and jaw locked. He had just been outclassed, and worse, by someone he'd publicly belittled. His daughter Victoria was the first to break the silence. "Marcus, I didn't know you were here," she said softly. "I thought you went back east to work on your own company." Marcus gave her a polite nod. "I did, but your father's prototype kept showing up in magazines, and it didn't sit right seeing someone else's name on my design." Gasps rippled through the bystanders. Reporters leaned in closer, sensing a story hotter than the California sun. Richard barked, "That's ridiculous! My company owns every design that leaves its doors." "Sure," Marcus said, his tone calm but sharp. "Except this one was created before I ever signed your contract. Your lawyers may have buried the truth, but the blueprints are still in my name." Victoria's eyes widened. "Wait, are you saying he stole your design?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was answer enough. Richard took a step forward, forcing a laugh to save face. "You've got some nerve making accusations like that in public. You think fixing one old car makes you a genius?" Marcus shrugged. "No, but it does make me honest. Can you say the same?" The crowd murmured again. The cameras were no longer interested in the Ferrari. All eyes were on the two men. Victoria looked between them, torn. "Dad, if what he's saying is true—" "Don't!" Richard snapped. "Not here." He turned toward Marcus, lowering his voice just enough to sound menacing. "Listen to me, Reed. I don't care what stunt you just pulled. You walk away from this, and maybe I'll forget today ever happened." Marcus tilted his head. "And if I don't?" Richard's smirk returned, though thinner now. "Then you'll regret it. I don't lose, especially not to people who—" He stopped himself, but the venom in his tone said enough. Marcus's expression hardened. "To people who look like me?" The silence hit heavier than the roar of the Ferrari had. Even Richard's friends shifted uncomfortably. He opened his mouth to deny it, but the damage was already done. "Careful, Richard," Marcus said quietly. "The world's watching now. And engines aren't the only thing I can bring to life." The reporters surged forward, bombarding Richard with questions. He pushed through the crowd, trying to retreat toward his limousine. Victoria stayed behind, eyes glistening with shame. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to Marcus. "He shouldn't have—" "You don't owe me anything," Marcus interrupted gently. "But I need you to understand something. This isn't just about a car, it's about respect, something money can't buy." Victoria nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "Then let me help you. My father can't hide behind his name forever." Marcus studied her face. There was sincerity there, a quiet regret that came from years of watching her father's cruelty go unchallenged. "I appreciate that," he said finally, "but I don't need revenge. I need truth. If the truth comes out, that's enough." As he turned to leave, Victoria grabbed his arm. "Wait, there's something you should see." She opened her handbag and pulled out a slim folder. "These are copies of your original schematics. I found them in the company archives months ago. I kept them because I knew what he did was wrong." Marcus opened the folder, scanning the familiar sketches, his handwriting, his annotations, his ideas. His chest tightened. Proof. He looked up at her. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" "I tried," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "He threatened to disown me, said the company's reputation was more important than a mechanic's pride." Marcus exhaled slowly, closing the folder. "You made the right choice, keeping these safe. But now, this changes everything." She hesitated. "What are you going to do?" "Expose him," Marcus said firmly. "Not for me, for every person he stepped on to keep his name clean." Victoria's gaze softened. "Then you'll need help. His lawyers are vicious, and his board will protect him." "I'm not afraid," Marcus said. "I've worked with louder engines and tougher fights." Before leaving, he turned toward the Ferrari one last time. Its polished red body reflected his steady eyes. "Funny thing," he murmured. "He offered me this car as a joke, but all it took to fix it was patience and respect. The same things he never learned. Victoria managed a small, sad smile. Then maybe it's time the world learned who really built the future he brags about. As Marcus walked away, the murmurs of the crowd followed him. Admiration, disbelief, respect. The cameras captured the image of a man who didn't just win a bet, he exposed a truth. Richard watched from his limousine window, face twisted with fury and fear. Find out everything about him, he barked at his assistant. Where he lives, who he works with. I want that man ruined before the week's over. But what Richard didn't know was that Marcus was already 3 steps ahead, and his next move would shake the entire industry. 3 days later, the glittering glass tower of Hale Motors International stood proudly against the Los Angeles skyline. Inside, the mood was anything but proud. Richard Hale sat in his corner office, staring at the morning newspaper. The headline read, "Black Engineer Exposes Millionaire's Lies, the Real Genius Behind Hale Motors' Prototype Engine." Below it was a picture of Marcus Reed, standing beside the revived Ferrari, his hands still stained with grease, his eyes calm but defiant. The article detailed everything: how Marcus had built the prototype, how Hale had claimed it as his own, and how the expo crowd had witnessed his humiliation. Richard crushed the newspaper in his fist. "Who leaked this?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the marble walls. Across the desk, his assistant hesitated. "Sir, the reports are saying the documents came from inside the company. Signed schematics, employee logs, internal memos. Someone betrayed me," Richard hissed. He slammed his palm on the desk. "Get legal on this. I want Reed discredited. I don't care what it costs." "Yes, sir." But deep down, Richard knew there was only one person who could have had those files: Victoria, his own daughter. Meanwhile, in a small workshop on the edge of downtown, Marcus sat with the same folder open before him. His tools lay scattered across a metal table, and the smell of oil mixed with the faint aroma of coffee. He wasn't celebrating, he was planning. His phone buzzed. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. He answered quietly. "You read the article?" "I did," she replied. "He's furious. You've cornered him, but he won't go down quietly. My father's already pulling strings." Marcus leaned back, the chair creaking beneath him. "Let him pull. The truth's out there now. You can't bury what's already printed." "He'll try," she warned. "He's already talking to the board about suing you for defamation." Marcus chuckled dryly. "Suing me with evidence that proves he's lying? That's rich." "Marcus," she said, her tone softening, "please be careful. He's not just angry, he's scared. And scared men with power are dangerous." Her words lingered. Marcus stared at the Ferrari parked in the corner of his garage, the same car that had changed everything. Its red body gleamed under the flickering workshop light. To him, it was more than a trophy. It was a symbol of how quickly pride could crumble when faced with truth. "I appreciate your warning," he said finally. "But I'm not afraid. I've faced worse than your father's lawyers." "I know," she said quietly. "But this time, he'll play dirty." Later that night, Marcus returned to his office to find something strange. The door was slightly ajar. He entered cautiously. Papers were scattered, drawers open, the folder missing. "Damn it," he muttered. Someone had broken in. He scanned the room, noticing a faint glow near the window, a security camera light. He rewound the footage. The screen flickered, showing 2 men in suits breaking in around midnight, searching through his things, pocketing the folder, and leaving quickly. One of them looked familiar. Richard's driver. Marcus exhaled slowly. So that's how he wants to play. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Detective Avery?" "Yeah, it's Marcus Reed. I think I've got something you'll want to see." The next morning, Richard entered his office feeling victorious. His driver had handed him the stolen folder just hours earlier. He opened it, grinning smugly. But inside, instead of incriminating evidence, he found blank pages. Every blueprint, every signature, gone. In their place was a single note written in neat handwriting: "You can't steal what never belonged to you." Mr. Richard's face turned crimson. "He's toying with me." Moments later, his phone rang. He answered sharply. "What?" "Mr. Hale," came Detective Avery's steady voice. "We need to talk about the break-in at Marcus Reed's workshop last night." Richard froze. "What break-in?" "Don't play dumb," Avery said. "We have surveillance footage showing your driver and another employee on the scene. You might want to come down to the station." Richard's throat went dry. "You're making a mistake. Then you'll have no problem clearing it up," Avery replied before hanging up. Richard slammed the phone down. His assistant peeked through the door nervously. "Sir, the board wants to see you. There's a meeting in 10 minutes. Richard took a deep breath, fixing his tie. He couldn't afford panic now. He had to look composed. As he entered the boardroom, whispers filled the air. The directors were seated around the long table, their expressions cold. "Mr. Hale," said the chairman, "we've received concerning reports about misconduct, theft of intellectual property, and a potential police investigation. Care to explain?" Richard forced a smile. "All lies. A jealous employee trying to smear my reputation," but the chairman slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a video clip of Richard's driver breaking into Marcus's office. The room fell silent. For the first time in his career, Richard Hale had no words. Across town, Marcus watched the news. The anchor's voice was steady. "Sources confirm that Hale Motors is under investigation for corporate theft and fraud. The company's stock has fallen 15% overnight." Marcus sighed. He didn't smile. There was no joy in seeing someone fall. Only justice. His phone buzzed again. "Victoria. He's being forced to step down," she said. "The board's replacing him." Marcus nodded quietly. "About time. He wants to meet you," she added hesitantly. "One last conversation." Marcus looked at the Ferrari again. "Tell him I'll come. But this time, he'll be the one listening." The next morning, the golden light of dawn spilled across Richard Kane's sprawling mansion. The Ferrari sat in the center of the driveway, spotless, gleaming, reborn. But the man who had resurrected it, Marcus Hayes, wasn't there to brag. He stood quietly beside the car, his uniform clean for once, holding a small, worn photo of his late father, the man who taught him to fix engines when they couldn't even afford one. Richard strutted out of the front door, coffee in hand, sunglasses on, arrogance intact. His friends followed, still half asleep, smirking. "So, did the little miracle worker fix it?" one of them teased. Richard chuckled. "I doubt it. These guys can't even afford a tool set that fits a Ferrari." Marcus didn't respond. He simply opened the driver's door, sat down, and turned the key. For a split second, there was silence. Then, roar. The Ferrari came alive with a thunderous growl, smooth and flawless, like the first breath of a sleeping dragon. The entire group froze. Richard's coffee slipped from his hand, splattering across his polished shoes. "What the? How?" he shouted. Marcus stepped out, calm, collected. "You had a faulty ECU and a disabled fuel pump relay. Someone sabotaged it. I repaired, recalibrated, and reset the system." The crowd was stunned. But Marcus wasn't done. "You said if I made it run, it's mine." Richard's smirk twitched. You can't be serious. It was a joke." Marcus's expression hardened. A man's word shouldn't be a joke. Silence blanketed the courtyard. Everyone looked between them, the weight of integrity crushing the millionaire's pride. Richard fumbled for words. "Fine, you want it? Take it. See how far it gets you. Probably can't even pay the insurance." Marcus simply smiled. "I don't need your approval to drive what I've earned." He got into the Ferrari, revved the engine once, and drove off, leaving behind the sound of disbelief and envy. But that wasn't the end. Later that day, a black SUV pulled into Richard's estate. From it stepped a man in a suit, sharp, official, confident. "Mr. Kane?" he called. "I'm from Orion Automotive. Our CEO, Mr. Carter, wants to speak with you." "Apparently you mocked one of his chief engineers today." Richard blinked. "What? Chief engineer?" The man handed him a tablet, showing Marcus standing beside the same Ferrari, now inside Orion's facility, surrounded by applauding staff. A headline read, "Top engineer Marcus Hayes restores Millionaire's Ferrari in 24 hours. Richard's face drained of color. His friends looked away, ashamed. At Orion HQ, Marcus was surrounded by his colleagues. "Didn't think you'd bring that beauty back," one of them said. Marcus smiled modestly. "Every machine deserves a second chance, even when people don't believe in it." Mr. Carter clapped him on the shoulder. "And every man deserves to be recognized for his work. You're leading the next restoration division. Congratulations, Marcus." Marcus took a deep breath. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not as the color of his skin, but as the strength of his skill. That evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Marcus drove the Ferrari through the city. Kids waved as he passed. People turned their heads at the sound of the engine. At a red light, an older woman selling flowers approached. "Beautiful car, son," she said kindly. Marcus smiled, buying a bouquet. "Thank you, ma'am. It's a reminder that sometimes broken things just need the right hands, she smiled back, eyes wise and warm. And the right heart, she added. The light turned green. Marcus looked at his reflection in the mirror. Not just the man who fixed a car, but the man who rebuilt himself after every insult, every doubt, every barrier. As he drove on, a billboard caught his eye, the Orion logo with his photo beneath it and a tagline that read, "Innovation runs on determination." He smiled softly. Somewhere in that big cold mansion, Richard Kane probably saw it too, and maybe, for the first time, realized what true wealth meant. Because real power wasn't in money or marble driveways. It was in rising above humiliation, proving worth without shouting, and letting success make the noise. Marcus downshifted, the Ferrari roaring into the distance, a black man behind the wheel of victory, leaving arrogance and ignorance far